Welcome to Wine and Words, brought to you by Fraser's Wine Merchants. I'm Sarah Jane Rose. Over the last few weeks, I've been going live on Instagram and on Facebook, talking about some of my favourite books and some of my favourite wines. We finished season 1 with a Zoom event, and we had guests, Martin Gamman, Master of Wine from Joseph Perrier Champagne, and also author and filmmaker Andrew David Barker. So I thought I would share some of those clips with you. Now, the audio has come straight from Zoom, so it's not perfect, but it's still really interesting. I hope you enjoy it. So let's start with Martin Gamman.
So today, the vineyards of Champagne, the ownership is extremely fragmented. There's about 35,000 hectares owned by about 17,000 different people, all around around the region, around the world. So the houses generally, or in fact all of the houses, none of them own all of their own vineyards, but we do own some, and we make our own wine, and we get in grapes from people that we've often been dealing with for maybe 2, 3, or even 4 generations. Champagne's quite a conservative region with a small c, and we tend to deal with the same people year after year, partly because that suits everybody, and as a family business, it's very much a personal relationship between the owners of Joseph Perrier and the growers that we get the grapes from. But there's quite a rather important reason why we want to deal with people over many generations, given that we can't in practice own all our own vineyards, and that is so that we can get some consistency over the product that you have in the bottle, in the glass in front of you. One of the things about being 150 kilometers due east of Paris is that we are a long way north in compared to any other vineyard region in France, and indeed, apart from little bits of Germany and little bits now of England, Wales, I have to say that as well. We're really getting on for quite marginal conditions. This has advantages and disadvantages. When we pick our grapes, they're quite happily ripe, but we are very pleased if we get 10% alcohol in the still wines that we make first off. So some people, perhaps who aren't so familiar with the way that we make champagne, might be a little bit surprised to know that we don't make a bubbly wine straight off. We pick our grapes, we squeeze them, we get the juice out, we turn that into still wine, and then in the spring following the harvest, we do our blending. So we blend the 3 grape varieties in Champagne: Chardonnay, that you'll have heard of, I'm sure; Pinot Noir, I'm sure you've heard of that; and there's another red grape, sometimes called Pinot Meunier. More today, perhaps people are trying to call it Meunier, which is about a third of what's planted in Champagne. So it's a pretty substantial part of what's there. But we're blending those wines made from those 3 grape varieties in order to try and get a level of consistency. So Champagne, we are absolutely the king of blenders. We blend, by default, and in fact, it's the very rarest of wines in Champagne. But part of the magic of Champagne, what we've done, or what the Champenois have managed to do, is to discover or to evolve that a deliberate second fermentation of a blend of still wines, we can turn that very kind of crisp acidity into an advantage and make something which is genuinely different from even sparkling wines made using the same grapes, using the same method in warmer parts of the world. And that's why Champagne is actually genuinely a wine of interest intrinsically. So what you have is what we call Cuvée Royale Non-Vintage Brut, our Cuvée Royale Non-Vintage Brut. There's lots of different names in Champagne. We call ours Cuvée Royale because we had a relationship back in the day with Queen Victoria and Edward VII, where we supplied both of those royal courts. The truth, of course, is that not very much to Queen Victoria and quite a lot more to Edward VII. But nevertheless, the French got rid of their own kings and queens in 1789 or 1825, wasn't it, finally? And they're always very pleased when they supply other people's. So we've used that little tag on our label, or mark, if you like, on our label since the late 1800s. And non-vintage is most champagne is non-vintage. And the reason that it's non-vintage is not that it's, if you like, a kind of sort of second-class thing. It's this deliberate blending of still wines from more than 1 year. So I said we're kings of blending. We blend still wines from Chardonnay, from Pinot Noir, from Pinot Meunier. Obviously, they come from different vineyards, from different villages, but we're also blending still wine across different years. This is before it goes in the bottle, before we do the second fermentation. And the reason we're doing that is to try and produce a consistent product from this, as I said, climatically very inconsistent region. Now, that's something of a, if you like, of a commercial decision, but hopefully what it does mean is that it makes life a little bit easier for you guys, because I hope you like Joseph Perrier. But if you find a style and a house, a producer that you like, if you take the non-vintage brut, year after year, it may evolve in a tiny, sort of imperceptible manner, but year after year, that style will come back and will be consistent, and hopefully you'll enjoy it over and over again. Brut means dry. Almost all, statistically, 97 something % of all the champagne drunk in the UK is brut, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. But normally the non-vintage brut, if you like, if it's the everyday aperitif style, drink it with your 11s is another glass before lunch, cup of tea in the afternoon while you're waiting for the kettle to boil in the afternoon, glass before dinner, and then when you get back from the party, a little glass just before you go to bed. It's just something that you can drink day in, day out, all day long, and you will never, well, most people I know will never get a headache. It's very light. So the bottle that you have there is based on today, so based on 2016 harvest. It was bottled in the spring of 2017. It spent 3 years, 18, 19, 20, waiting, lying in a bottle after the second fermentation is finished, and then was disgorged in the middle of 2020, which is where we take the yeast out of the bottle, which is now dead because it's finished its job, and we put a cork in and we put the cage on, and then we label it up and send it out. So it takes a long time to make good champagne, and what you hopefully you'll find, he says, just a quick look, I'm running up vastly over time. I did warn Sarah I'd do this, but now we'll taste, so we can at least have a drink after listening to me. Thank you very much. So the important thing about time in champagne is that it takes this really quite acidic, quite sharp, sometimes quite aggressive wine when it's very young, and it gives it softness. So what we choose to do as a relatively small, privately owned family operation is give the wine plenty of time. The law says we only have to give it 15 months in the bottle to do the second fermentation. We choose to have 3 years plus a bit. Okay, so that's quite a big kind of, given the cost of production of champagne, that's quite a big financial commitment. But what that does is means that we can soften it naturally, if you like, or round it out quite naturally. What we don't need to then do is add a large amount of sugar when we get to the end of the process, because the last little bit of the process of making champagne is that we can add a little bit of sugar to the sparkling wine after we've taken the yeast out, before we put the cork in. And again, the sugar can have the same effect of rounding it out. But we choose to age it a bit longer. We can use a little bit less sugar. We get a little bit, if you like, a little bit more of the fruit character comes through. So what you should find in your glass is a very kind of fruity style of champagne, a lot of apple, maybe a little bit of pear, maybe a little bit of sort of overly toasty. We don't make a toasty style of champagne, at least not this one. So there's a little bit of yeasty character in it, but it's not terribly pronounced. And hopefully what you find is it's basically a very easy drinking style. I get a lot of people who say to me, I don't drink champagne, but I do like your non-vintage brut.
So that was Martin Gamman, Master of Wine, talking all about champagne. He went on to go into great detail about Joseph Perrier, and we had some questions, and it was really lovely and interesting. And I'm really grateful that he could join us. We were also tasting the Joseph Perrier Cuvée Royale champagne at the same time, which was delicious. Now, if you're interested in finding more about Wine and Words, then Season 2 will be starting on the 14th of March, and I will be going live on Facebook and Instagram every Sunday at 9, and this time it will be books and Bordeaux. You can find out more about that schedule by visiting my website, sarahjanerose.uk. You can purchase Joseph Perrier champagne from fraserswine.co.uk, and you can have a look at the Bordeaux wine case that I'll be putting together for the next season. This has been Wine and Words, produced by Sarah Jane Rose for Fraser's Wine Merchants. Music by Ben Gilbert.